welcome back to another edition of Mondo Musings. I'm your presenter, Nicardo McLean. Now, I just want to wish all of you watching this all the very best for the new year that is upon us. Now, in this video, I want to zoom in on 2012 World Under 20 400 meter hurdles champion Janieve Russell, a two-time Olympic finalist whose PB of 53.08 seconds was done while finishing fourth in Tokyo in 2021. With two World Champs final appearances, two Commonwealth titles, and five national championship belts also already in the bag, the former Homewood technical standout is clearly one of the most accomplished athletes in the discipline that Jamaica has ever produced. And the effervescent Manchesterian hasn't been at all shy concerning her ambition of ascending to the top of the black, green, and gold tree from a time's perspective, publicly stating from as far back as 2018, as reported by the Star, and repeatedly since then, that the objective is to run under 53 seconds. I want to get the national record. I'm going after it this year. If I don't get it this year, then definitely next year. Suffice to say, though, this oft-stated aspiration has yet to come to pass for Miss Russell, with two active national rivals in the form of two-time world champs bronze medalist Rochelle Clayton and recent Olympic finalist Cheyenne Salmon, both joining the once rarefied sub-53-second club since then. And in fact, even former world and Olympic champion Melaine Walker's brilliant national standard of 52.42 seconds, which saw her claim gold by over half a second from arch rival Ashinda Demas in Berlin, would quite incredibly only have been good enough for fifth in Paris. So even accounting for the obvious advantage afforded by improvements in shoot technology that we've seen over the last couple of years, the event has clearly moved on, quite possibly, to an extent where the medals are now beyond the reach of even an athlete as talented as Janieve Russell. Now, this jogged my mind back to 2011, which was the first and thus far last season in which the veteran MVP athlete tried her hand at the Heptathlon. It was an impressive campaign during which she mined silver at the Pan American Junior Championships, defeating a number of much more experienced multi-eventers in the process. Now, while they were competing on entirely different continents, among the clutch of gifted European multi-talents coming through in 2011 was a certain Brit by the name of Katarina Johnson-Thompson, who has subsequently gone on to win two world titles, an Olympic silver, and a pentathlon crown at World Indoors, to firmly establish herself as one of the all-time greats in the event. Now, as they're both sprinter-jumper types, I thought it would be quite interesting to compare the respective PBs of Russell and Johnson-Thompson at the end of said 2011 season, by which point the latter, who is 10 months older, had about 4 years of multi-events experience under her belt, and it all makes for some very interesting reading. At that time, Katarina Johnson-Thompson, henceforth also referred to as KJT, had a 100-meter hurdles best of 13.90 seconds set that year. Russell, meanwhile, had gone as fast as 14:12. In the high jump, where both were prodigious, KJT's 1.84 meter best played Russell's 1.80 meter peak, scaled 2 years earlier. In the shot, an obviously weaker event for both, Johnson-Thompson's 11.11 meter best put her over 20 centimeters up on Russell's 10.86. It was similarly close going in the half lap, with a Briton at 24:25, just ahead of Russell, who clocked in with 24:40. In the long jump, where both were again exceptional coming through the age group ranks, Johnson-Thompson produced the then lifetime longest mark of 6.44 meters in 2011. On the other hand, Russell's best back then, which still stands now because she's hardly competed in the event since then, was 6.20 meters. A 37.88 meter javelin from KJT put her out front once again. However, Russell's near 34 meter PB actually strikes me as being more impressive, considering, of course, Jamaica's pedigree in the event and the fact that up to that point, I assume she'd hardly thrown the implement before. Now, Johnson Thompson, who has gone on to establish herself as one of the best 800-meter runners in heptathlon history, then had a two-lap PB of 2:18.18 recorded indoors back in 2009. But again, Russell was hot on her heels, thanks to a fastest mark that was less than 3/10 slower at 2:18.47. As for the overall picture, their respective HEP PBs were 5,787 points for KJT to Russell's 5,361 points at the conclusion of the 2011 season. The following year, Johnson Thompson exploded for 6,267 points at the London Olympics. Russell, meanwhile, survived an almighty scare from America's Shamir Little to crown herself the best junior intermediate hurdler on the planet. And the rest, as they say, is history. But as someone who has believed for the last 10 plus years that Russell is the finest Jamaican female multi-events talent to come along in about 2 decades, I've always wondered if she was just another season of reps in the HEP away from breaking out like Johnson Thompson did in London over a decade ago. And even now, with her medal prospects in the intermediate hurdles seemingly diminishing by this season, does she still have the all-round ability, with a year or two of intensive focus on the multis, of course, to at the very least claim the national record she has long coveted? Now, in the 7 event spectacle, that standard is currently held by former NCAA heptathlon champion and one-time Jamaican national high jump victor Diane Guthrie Gresham, who established the mark on her way to gold at the 1995 NCAA championships. At 6,527 points, it's definitely no gimme. That being said, though, here's what I believe is a plausible projected path to 6,529 points for Miss Russell. Now I'm going to go ahead and give her a 1320 100 hurdles. Probably a bit on the optimistic side, yes, but not something I'd consider outrageous once she gets back into the sprint hurdling groove. A 186 high jump for an athlete who scaled 1.80 meters at just 15 may actually be on the conservative side, all things being equal, which of course they never are. Now let's add a modest 2 meters to her current 1086 shot put PB, which was recorded a couple months before she turned 18. Her existing 2343 200 PB from 2018 is workable. A projected 650 performance for someone who was a 620 jumper at 16 is also on the reasonable side. Meanwhile, let's plug in a humble 40.5 meter javelin effort, despite my suspicion that there is a lot more than a less than 7 meter improvement on her PB possible. And we'll wrap things up by holding on to her hand-timed 2:11.50 from way back in January of 2015. Behold, your new national heptathlon record holder. Of course, none of the actual PBs that I mentioned were set under the rigors of an actual heptathlon competition, but it does still give a pretty good idea of what Janieve Russell might be capable of. And hey, you can call me crazy if you like, but I do honestly believe that there's still a couple hundred points left on the table. But beyond national records or even global medals, for me, it's about legacy. Now, when one thinks of Jamaica's history in the women's 400-meter hurdles, thoughts invariably turn to Dion Hemmings McCarthy, the first Jamaican woman to win an Olympic gold for Jamaica, or Melian Walker, who matched the former's feat at the 2008 Olympics before bettering her 1997 silver at the 2009 Berlin World Championships, or even 2012 Olympic bronze medalist Khalees Spencer Carter, who was a dominant force on the Diamond League circuit for the first 5 years of that series' existence. And no, of course, there's Rochelle Clayton. The nation's heptathlon history, by contrast, is basically waiting to be written, providing a golden opportunity for someone like Janieve Russell to do what I imagine most athletes dream of doing, blazing a trail in an event for subsequent generations to follow in their footsteps. Now, this musing about Janieve Russell ties back into the larger issue concerning track and field athletes who, though successful in their current event, could probably achieve even greater things in another. Another multi events prospect in this category who readily springs to my mind is Ashanti Moore, whose outlook in the sprints has definitely dimmed over the last few years, with it becoming increasingly difficult to see her consistently making national teams even in the imagined post Big Three era. Now, given Ashanti Moore's supreme physical tools and previous experience in the event, though limited, is she someone who could develop into a contender on the global stage with a few seasons of reseasoning in the heptathlon? Then, of course, there are athletes who some people out there believe are in entirely the wrong spot altogether. And I know to this day, there are many within Jamaican track and field circles who hold to the notion that Jahil Hyde, despite having two World Junior 400-meter hurdles titles and a World Championships final appearance to his credit, should be running riot down a wing for the Reggae Boys or for a club in the Premier League, La Liga, or Serie A, as opposed to using that speed to blaze a backstretch in completion of a 400-meter hurdles task. No, I would love to hear your thoughts on my thoughts and the general issue at hand. Are there any track and field athletes, whether Jamaican or foreign, who you'd love to see transition to a new event in the upcoming outdoor season or beyond? Or is there a current athletics competitor who you think is ignoring their true calling, which lies in an entirely different sport? Get the conversation going by sharing your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks, as always, for checking out the content. Until next time, peeps, Godspeed.